of articles and features from the USA Today. For today, Thursday, January 15th, 2026, we begin as always with announcing your reader. Your reader is for this hour is Nick. And we begin in the front section of the USA Today. ICE detention is booming under Trump. Donald Trump's second presidency has brought sweeping changes to immigration enforcement. One of the takeaways, ICE detention has expanded dramatically, both in the number of people being held and the sites holding them. Trump kickstarted his promised mass deportation campaign in 2025 with a series of executive orders that paved the way for a stricter application of immigration law for new policies to expand enforcement. A year in, the arrests of undocumented immigrants have climbed dramatically. The pace of deportation flights, while rising, hasn't quite kept up. The result is that there are more people being held in detention for longer. Nearly 69,000 people were in ICE detention on January 7th, 2026, according to snapshot data provided by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. That figure eclipses the number of detainees last year, which reached fewer than 38,000 people in early January of 2025, before Trump took office. Trump's orders for ICE to maximize detention and discretionary releases of immigrants without legal status have driven the rise in the detained population, according to a report by the American Immigration Council, an advocacy organization that promotes fairness in immigration policy. A separate order forcing immigration judges to deny bond to large swaths of immigrants mean more are fighting their case to remain in the United States from inside detention. With the administration sending more people to detention centers, fewer people are being permitted to leave them while they fight their cases, the report says. ICE holds undocumented immigrants in a variety of detention settings. They include privately run, dedicated immigration detention centers, temporary tent facilities on military bases, county jails, and state prisons. The number of ICE detention centers exploded in 2025, driven by an increase in the number of county jails holding immigrants for ICE, but also in the arrival of alternative sites like Camp East Montana on Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas, or the Florida-run Alligator Alcatraz outside Miami. Most recently, the administration began contemplating buying and converting large warehouses into detention centers. Now they want something more industrialized, more mechanized. They're in Reichland Melnick, senior fellow of the American Immigration Council, and a co-author of the report, A Few Massive Mega Facilities, where they can hold tens of thousands. Whether it will happen is unclear. There are 107 detention centers for immigrants in early January 2025. By year's end, the number had roughly doubled to 12, ICE data shows. The American Immigration Council report tracked a 24,500% increase in the number of people with no criminal record held in ICE detention on any given day. Other researchers have underscored this trend. We've never seen detention numbers this high, said Austin Cochler, an immigration researcher at Syracuse University. The growth in immigrant detention in the last 4 months has come almost exclusively from detaining people with no criminal history. In the departure from practice in Democratic and Republican administrations alike, the Trump administration considers anyone who crossed the border illegally a criminal. According to an opinion in June from the Justice Department, it suggests any immigrant who eludes examination is like a convict who escapes from federal custody. Facilities have long lacked care. More people in immigration detention means more deaths in custody, too. The agency has publicly reported 15 deaths from January 2023 through September 30th, the end of the fiscal 2025. A congressional memo in November counted 25 deaths in ICE custody since the start of the calendar year. And the Guardian news outlet, compiling from various sources, counted 32 deaths in 2025. Issues with subpar care in immigration detention facilities are long-standing and predate the second Trump administration. In 2024, a 2024 ACLU report reviewed 3 years of in-custody deaths during the first Trump and Biden administrations and found 95% of ICE detention deaths could have been prevented with adequate care. The report cited flawed internal oversight mechanisms and failure to provide adequate care. The report cited flawed internal... I feel like I'm repeating myself. But we'll do it anyway. And failure to provide adequate medical and mental health care in the centers. Congress authorized $45 billion to expand ICE detention, on top of ICE's already approved $4 billion appropriation. That breaks down to an annual budget of nearly $15 billion, 2 times larger than the budget for the Federal Bureau of Prisons, the American Immigration Council report says. The report calculates that the additional money, ICE could acquire enough detention beds to house 135,000 people at any given time. The United States hasn't held that many people outside the criminal justice system since the internment of people of Japanese, German, and Italian descent during World War II. Jessica Vaughn, director of policy for the Center for Immigration Studies, which advocates for immigration restrictions, said ICE needed the additional money to improve processing, to move people through the system, and stop releases from the detention centers. They don't want to release people because there is no space for them, she said. And NASA is asking the public for a menu fit for Mars. NASA, the Earthlings, help us farm Mars. The nation's space agency has launched an international competition to help feed astronauts stationed on Mars, asking for a 2-week meal plan to feed an undetermined number of people. Winners can take home up to $750,000 as long as they're U.S. citizens. The competition, officially known as Mars to Table, evoking the foodie phrase farm to table, asks participants to design a system for growing and producing food on the red planet. Organizers say they want to use what they learn from this competition to help both Mars astronauts and people still on Earth. By designing food systems that operate reliably under extreme constraints, Mars to Table highlights approaches that reduce dependence on fragile supply chains, maximize resource efficiency, and enable food production where traditional systems fall short, competition organizers said in an announcement. In doing so, the challenge bridges space exploration with Earth's most demanding food challenges, they said. President Donald Trump has vowed that the American will be the first person to set foot on Mars, and has outlined an ambitious project to return astronauts to the moon in 2 years, and to begin building a permanent nuclear-powered lunar outpost by 2030. A mission to test out some of that technology, Artemis 2, is scheduled to launch sometime in the next several months. NASA is hoping to send people to Mars sometime in the 2030s, although Congress earlier in January killed a precursor program designed to collect rock samples from Mars and return them to Earth. That Mars sample return project would have helped pioneer new technologies that could have been used on crewed Mars missions. Our astronauts headed to and living on Mars will face significant food challenges, NASA notes, from making sure they get proper nutrition to menu fatigue from eating the same meal too frequently. NASA had previously said experiments aboard the International Space Station are helping inform food planning for Mars missions. NASA already knows about how to produce and package food for short duration missions, or missions like the ISS where resupply is possible. Officials also said the competition is aimed at developing ways to farm on Mars. Competitors have until August 21st to submit their proposals for the Mars to Table contest, with winners announced in September. The international teams can compete, but they're not eligible for the cash prize. The competition evokes the 2015 Matt Damon blockbuster movie, The Martian, in which a stranded NASA astronaut grows potatoes in order to survive. And we'll move over to another sciencey type story. AI frenzy driving supply chain crisis. An acute global shortage of memory chips is forcing artificial intelligence consumer electronics companies to fight for dwindling supplies as prices soar for the unglamorous but essential components that allow devices to store data. Japanese electronics stores have begun limiting how many hard disk drives shoppers can buy. Chinese smartphone makers are warning of the price increases. Tech giants such as Microsoft, Google, and ByteDance are scrambling to secure supplies from memory chip makers such as Micron, Samsung Electronics, and SK Hynix, according to 3 people familiar with discussions. The squeeze spans almost every type of memory, from flash chips used in USB drives and smartphones to advanced high-bandwidth memory that feeds AI chips in data centers. Prices in some segments have more than doubled since February of 2025, according to the market research firm TrendForce, drawing in traders betting that the rally has further to run. The fallout could reach beyond tech. Many economists and executives warn the protracted shortage risks slowing AI-based productivity gains and delaying hundreds of billions of dollars in digital infrastructure. It could add inflationary pressure, just as many economies are trying to tame price increases and navigate U.S. tariffs. The memory shortage has now graduated from a component-level concern to a macro and economic risk, says Sanjit Virgoya, CEO of Greyhound Research and Technology Advisory Firm. The AI build-out is colliding with a supply chain that cannot meet its physical requirements. This Reuters examination of the spiraling supply crisis is based on the interviews with almost 40 people, including 17 executives at chip makers and distributors. It shows industry efforts to meet voracious appetite for advanced chips, driven by NVIDIA and tech giants like Google, Microsoft, and Alibaba, creating a dual bind. Chip makers still can't produce enough high-end semiconductors, for the AI race. Yet their tilt away from the traditional memory products is choking supply to smartphones, PCs, and consumer electronics. Some are now hurrying to correct course. Details of the global scramble by tech companies and price increases described by electronics retailers and component suppliers in China and Japan are reported here for the first time. Average inventory levels at the suppliers of dynamic random access memory, the main type used in computers and phones, fell to 2 to 4 weeks in October and 3 to 8 weeks in July, and 13 to 17 weeks in late 2024, according to TrendForce. The crunch is unfolding as investors question whether the billions of dollars poured into AI infrastructure have inflated a bubble. Some analysts predict a shakeout, with only the biggest and financially strongest companies able to stomach the price increases. With only the biggest. One memory chip executive told Reuters the shortage would delay future data center projects. New capacity takes at least 2 years to build. But memory chip makers are wary of overbuilding for fear it would end up idle should the demand surge pass, the person said. Samsung and SK Hynix have announced investments in new capacity but haven't detailed the production split between HBM and high bandwidth memory and conventional memory. SK Hynix has told analysts that the memory shortfall will last through late 2027, Citi said in November. These days, we're receiving requests for memory supplies from so many companies that we're worried about how we'll be able to handle all of them. If we fail to supply them, they could face a situation where they can't do business at all. Che Tae-wan, chairman of SK Hynix parent SK Group, said in an industry forum in Seoul. OpenAI in October signed initial deals with Samsung, SKX Hynix to supply chips for its Stargate project and will require up to $9,000 wafers a month by 2029. That's double today's global monthly HBM production, Che said. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time now is 15 minutes after the hour, and we continue in our front section. Clintons refused to testify before Congress on Epstein. Republican lawmakers said they'll move forward next week with contempt of Congress proceedings after former President Bill Clinton failed to show up for a scheduled January 13th deposition in the House Oversight Committee's investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. Both he and Hillary Clinton have refused to sit for depositions in the GOP-run probe, according to a January 12th letter sent to the committee by their attorneys, who argued the subpoenas issued to them by the Republican-led panel are unenforceable. President and Secretary Clinton have already provided the limited information they possess about Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell to the committee, the letter obtained by USA Today said. They did so proactively and voluntarily, and despite the fact that the subpoenas are invalid and legally unenforceable, untethered to a valid legislative purpose, unwarranted, because they do not seek pertinent information and an unprecedented infringement on the separation of powers. Speaking to reporters after Bill Clinton's no-show, Representative James Comer, Republican of Kentucky, the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, accused the former Democratic president of struggling with the word, messing with lawmakers' efforts to find more about his ties to Epstein. We've communicated with President Clinton's legal team for months now, giving them opportunity after opportunity to come in, to give us a day, and they continue to delay. I think it's very disappointing. Hillary Clinton had been scheduled for a separate January 14th deposition. The Clintons have called for a full release of any information mandated to become public under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, passed by Congress late last year. Though more photos of Bill Clinton and Epstein who were friendly have been released by the Department of Justice, the former president has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing. More than 2 million Epstein-related documents are still being reviewed, the DOJ has said. The complete release of files related to Epstein since the December 19th deadline means that someone or something is being protected, Clinton spokesperson Angel Urena said in the December 22nd statement. We need no such protection, Urena said. President Donald Trump, who was friendly with Epstein years ago and has denied knowledge of his criminality, has said Bill Clinton is a big boy who can handle scrutiny. I hate to see photos come out of him, but this is what Democrats, mostly Democrats, and a couple of bad Republicans are asking for, Trump said in December. A full vote in the House of Representatives would be needed to refer contempt charges to the DOJ. Trump West Wing advisor and conservative commentator Steve Bannon served a 4-month prison sentence following contempt charges. So did former Trump aide Peter Navarro. And U.S. official signals Greenland action could be weeks away. President Donald Trump's desire to annex Greenland will not be thwarted, and there will be meaningful U.S. action related to the Arctic island within weeks or months, according to a senior administration official. That's the view of Thomas Dans, Trump's Arctic commissioner. He's regarded as one of the main proponents of the president's interest in Greenland, an idea first brought to Trump by billionaire and former diplomat Ronald Lauder. Dans has been working on the issue since 2020. This is a train route with multiple stops, he said in an exclusive interview with USA Today. Things can move on an express basis, skip the local stops, and go directly to the main station. That's where President Trump wants to move it, at high speed. Still, Dan said that while he thinks there could be noticeable progress on negotiations for a deal on Greenland, sooner rather than later, he ultimately expects the acquisition to take longer than that to complete. We need to get the people of Greenland on board, he said, referring to polls that show while the majority of Greenland's 57,000 inhabitants want to eventually secede from Denmark, the vast majority do not want Greenland to become the 51st U.S. state. Denmark and Greenland have said Greenland is not for sale. Dan said that things could happen quickly from a transactional standpoint, but there will be a process to gain trust and support of the Greenlandic people that will require time and effort from the U.S. side. The assessment from Dans comes as U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance hosts a meeting with senior Danish and Greenlandic officials at the White House on January 14th. U.S. officials confirmed to USA Today. The meeting was requested by Denmark amid Trump's threatening insistence that the United States must have Greenland, and was supposed to be with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. But the one sign that momentum on Greenland would be gathering pace, Vance will now steer these discussions. Vance asked to join the meeting. Danish Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen told ministers on January 12th Rubio will be in attendance, he said. And we move to a national obit. Claudette Colvin. She was a civil rights pioneer. She leaves a legacy of courage, lived quietly. Claudette Colvin, whose refusal to move to the back of the Montgomery, Alabama bus as a teenager preceded the better-known efforts of Rosa Parks, by less than a year, has died. She was 86. It was a profound sadness that the Claudette Colvin Foundation and family announced the passing of Claudette Colvin, a beloved mother, grandmother, and civil rights pioneer. The foundation and family said in a statement posted on Facebook, "She leaves behind a legacy of courage that helped change the course of American history." Colvin died of natural causes in southeast Texas near Houston, said Ashley Roseborough of Roseborough Holdings in Washington, a Washington, D.C. based management and community engagement firm that represents the Colvin family. Montgomery Mayor Stephen L. Reed said Colvin's life reminds us that movements are built not only by those whose names are most familiar, but by those whose courage comes early, quietly, and at great personal cost. It was March 2nd, 1955, that Colvin, then a 15-year-old, bespectacled honors student at Montgomery's Booker T. Washington High School, stepped onto a City Line bus in Montgomery. She recalled wearing a light blue sweater and navy blue skirt. Later, her month would say on any other day, events might have played out differently. But that, as it turned out, fate picked the wrong day to test her. Colvin, her daughter, Colvin would explain that she'd just spent February studying black history and learned about injustices throughout the South in school, and that these thoughts played in her head as she boarded that bus that day. Montgomery's segregation laws dictated that white people sat in the front and black people in the back, and with a no-man's land of seats between the two groups. Colvin was seated in the no-man's land, when a group of white passengers boarded. The teen refused to comply when the driver asked her to move to the rear. I felt as though Harriet Tubman was pushing me down one shoulder and Sojourner Truth was pushing me down on the other, she said. So therefore history had me glued to the seat. That was the reason I could not move. Eventually several police officers boarded the bus too, but Colvin still refused to budge. Colvin was dragged off the bus, handcuffed and charged with assault and battery, disorderly conduct, and violating city segregation laws. Most of the charges were dismissed, but the judge found Colvin guilty of assault, and she was made a ward of the state and placed on indefinite probation. The months that followed were harsh, with the teen shunned by friends. It was difficult because people looked at me differently, Colvin said. The people who didn't know me thought I was crazy. Some of the people didn't want their children to be associated with me. Fred Gray, the civil rights lawyer who would ultimately take the fight against Montgomery segregation laws to the United States Supreme Court, lauded the teen's courage in the growing fight for civil rights. You had a 15-year-old girl who did what she did and was willing to take whatever consequences, not knowing what was going to happen. He said, Claudette had a lot more courage than many of us involved. Gray and others hoped to challenge Montgomery's segregation laws in court, but with Colvin's segregation violation charge dismissed, the choice was made to wait until a stronger case emerged. Months later, Parks was arrested. In 1956, Colvin was one of 4 black women who were plaintiffs in Browder v. Gale, which successfully challenged Montgomery's segregated bus seating as unconstitutional, transforming public transportation of all types across the country. Colvin would leave the South after the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., moving to New York, where she spent years as a nursing aide. Laws changed, so did society, and in 2019, the Montgomery Street where she could once live was renamed Claudette Colvin Drive. But the indefinite probation to which she had been sentenced hung over her like a cloud. Finally, in November of 2021, after efforts by legal volunteers and researchers, a Montgomery juvenile court judge expunged Colvin's 1955 record, calling it a measure of statutory right and fairness for what has since been recognized as a courageous act. "I am no longer at 82 a juvenile delinquent," she joked. 2 years later, as her home city recognized her with a street name change, Colvin would say that she hadn't gone out looking for trouble. No one asked her to take action. "I just went on my own, and I knew I had to take care of myself," she said. "I'm a self-made woman. You have to have strong courage, strong faith, and belief in yourself." And Trump to withhold funds from sanctuaries. President Donald Trump said he plans to withhold federal funds from so-called sanctuary cities and states that have them, seeking to punish jurisdictions that don't cooperate with federal immigration enforcement. Trump announced the step in a January 13th speech to the Detroit Economic Club, saying that his administration won't make any payments to sanctuary cities or states having cities starting on February 1st, because they do everything possible to protect criminals at the expense of American citizens. The move comes as Trump defends his administration's aggressive immigration enforcement amid protests that mobilized after a woman was shot and killed by an immigration and customs enforcement agent last week in Minneapolis. The Department of Justice has designated 11 states as well as the District of Columbia sanctuary jurisdictions: California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Minnesota, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Washington. 10 of the 11 have Democratic governors. 18 cities are considered sanctuary jurisdictions by the DOJ, including New York City, Chicago, San Francisco, New Orleans, Denver, and Portland, Oregon. 4 county governments have the status. Trump announced the new policy as he railed on Somali Americans in Minnesota who were charged in a sprawling $250 million fraud case involving state-administered programs. Trump said he also is providing 90 days notice to states such as California that bill the federal government for costs associated with addressing the needs of immigrants. The president said his administration has suspended nearly 8,000 federal loans administered through the Small Business Administration to suspected scammers in Minnesota. Trump could face legal hurdles in his effort to punish sanctuary cities as a federal judge in San Francisco blocked the administration from withholding federal funding from 16 sanctuary jurisdictions in April of 2025. There's no legal definition on a sanctuary jurisdiction, but the DOJ said it considered things such as failure to collaborate with ICE agents, providing government benefits to undocumented immigrants, or refusing to share immigration information about jail detainees. In August, Attorney General Pam Bondi singled out sanctuary jurisdictions across the country and threatened litigation, writing in a statement that sanctuary policies impede law enforcement and put American citizens at risk by design. The Trump administration promptly filed lawsuits targeting immigration policies in Minnesota, New York City, and other jurisdictions. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of the USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time now is about 29 to 30 minutes after the hour. And we start now with the money section. And we begin with Barbie making history again. Barbie is launching its first autistic doll in an effort to represent how individuals with autism spectrum disorder experience the world around them. USA Today can exclusively reveal. The doll, which is part of Barbie's Fashionistas line, includes intentional design choices like flexible elbow and hand joints for stimming, which refers to repetitive body movement behavior some people with autism engage in to process sensory information. The Barbie's accessories also reflect those that some autistic people sport, like noise-canceling headphones, loose-fitting clothing, and a tablet with augmentation and alternative communication apps. Mattel said the doll has been in development for more than 18 months in partnership with the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, a private, nonprofit disability rights organization that aims to empower the autistic community. The Barbie will be available beginning January 12th at Mattel Shop and Target for a suggested retail price of $11.87. It will later roll out in Walmart stores nationwide in March. The new Barbie doll arrives as the autism community has faced extra attention in the national spotlight over controversial assertions from President Donald Trump's administration. In September of 2025, Trump and his top health aides announced that Tylenol use during pregnancy can contribute to the development of autism in children, a position many in the medical community have disagreed with for years. Health agencies across the world and other medical experts have not found a definitive link between Tylenol and autism, though that has not stopped some in the autism community from championing efforts to find a cure or reason why their child is autistic. Meanwhile, portrayals of people with autism have increased in popular culture, thanks to shows like Love on the Spectrum and The Good Doctor. And with the advent of the new Barbie, people with autism will now see themselves reflected in an iconic, quintessential children's doll. It's so important for young autistic people to see authentic, joyful representations of themselves. And that's exactly what this doll is. Colin Killick, executive director of ASAN, said in a statement, "Partnering with Barbie allowed us to share insights and guidance through the design process and to ensure the doll fully represents and celebrates the autistic community, including the tools that help us be independent." Autism is not a physically visible disorder, but some people with autism may rely on certain items or types of clothing as they move through the world, which Barbie tried to reflect in the doll and its accessories. The Barbie with autism is designed with an eye gaze shifted slightly to the side, which aims to reflect how some members of the autistic community sometimes avoid direct eye contact, Mattel said in the release. According to a 2022 study in the Journal of Autism and Developmental Disorders, researchers have varying theories about why autistic people may avoid eye contact. But many studies point to hyperactivity in the part of the brain known as the amygdala. Yeah, sorry for the tongue twister. Each doll comes with the same accessories: a pink finger clip fidget spinner, a pink noise-canceling headphones, and a pink tablet. The tablet shows symbol-based augmentative and alternative communication apps, which help people who have an impaired or limitation in speech, language, or reading, including those with autism, according to the American Speech Language Hearing Association. The Barbie's outfit is a loose-fitting pinstripe A-line dress and purple Mary Jane-style flat shoes. Mattel said the dress is flowy so as to provide less fabric to skin contact, and the shoes promote stability. The artistic Barbie is the latest addition to the Barbie Fashionistas collection, which is aimed at being the most diverse and inclusive line of the doll. Recently, in July of 2025, Mattel launched a Barbie with type 1 diabetes. As part of the Autistic Barbie's launch, Mattel has also said it is teaming up with several prominent faces in the autism community. Madison Marilla from Netflix's Love on the Spectrum, mother-daughter influencers Precious and Miko Mirage, and fashion designer Arushi Pratap. Again, if I butchered any of those names, I'm sorry. In statements, they all said the new autistic Barbie will allow others to feel understood. When other families see this Barbie, I hope it bridges the gap. I hope they feel included in the conversation in the spaces where neurotypical individuals already belong, because we belong here too, more precious Mirage said. And experts, Trump's mortgage bond buying won't work. The recent suggestion by President Donald Trump that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac buy mortgage bonds in order to lower the cost of home loans is unlikely to help average Americans struggling to afford home ownership and may be harmful to financial markets, many observers say. On January 8th, Donald Trump said on Truth Social that he was directing his representatives to buy $200 billion in mortgage bonds, seemingly referring to Fannie and Freddie. Shortly after, Bill Pulte, Trump's appointee who oversees the agency that regulates the two companies, said he was on it. It was the second time that week in which the president appeared to suggest some sort of policy intervention for the housing market, where a long-time dearth of new construction has made homes unaffordable for many Americans. On January 7th, Trump said he wanted to ban institutional investors from buying single-family homes. The White House has clearly lost the narrative when it comes to financial markets, said Philip Basil, director of the Economic Growth and Financial Stability at Better Markets. If you want lower rates, Treasury markets are the first to stop. They are the basis for everything. The White House is pursuing the exact opposite of what they should be doing. Fannie and Freddie play a critical but often misunderstood role in the housing market. They buy mortgages from banks and other lenders, which allow these companies to turn around and extend more credit to other borrowers. Fannie and Freddie package the loans into bonds or smooth out the risk. Investors include pension funds and insurance companies buy the bonds, which offers a steady stream of income. The process keeps the mortgage market, which also has about $13.5 trillion of outstanding debt, according to a recent Urban Institute analysis, humming. It allows any borrower with strong enough credit to go to a lender and get a home loan lasting as long as 30 years, but have the option to refinance at any point during the life of the loan. Mortgage rates tend to follow the same path as a 10-year U.S. Treasury note, in part because the average age of outstanding home loans is 6.3 years, according to a 2025 analysis by ICE Mortgage Technology for USA Today. Treasury yields are elevated in part because the U.S. government runs a steep deficit, which was only exacerbated by Trump's signature 2025 tax and spending bill. The increase in debt and deficits drives up interest rates, the Yale Budget Lab wrote in July when the bill was signed into law. By 2054, the 10-year Treasury yield is 1.4 percentage points higher than it would have been if the bill were not passed. Bond investors are likely to shy away from financial markets where it appears politicians have too much sway, said Corey Freyer, Director of Investor Protection and Nonpartisan Consumer Federation of America. It is a problem that once again Trump believes he can unilaterally direct an independent agency and the leader of that agency will not question him. That's a problem even when the policy direction could benefit borrowers, Freyer told USA Today. Annual inflation remains at 2.7%. U.S. consumer prices rose 2.7% in December from a year earlier, the Labor Department said on January 13th, nearly in line with forecasters' expectations. The final Consumer Price Index report of 2025 caps off a year in which inflation gradually eased but remained uneven across the economy. Annual inflation briefly climbed to 3% in September before easing back to 2.7% in November, reflecting small price increases for gasoline, new vehicles, and other items. The new report found that from November to December, consumer prices raised 0.3%. Price gains were led by the increases of cost of shelter and food, which rose by 0.4 and 0.7% over the month, respectively. Energy prices also climbed 0.3% in December over the past 12 months. The energy index increased 2.3%, and the food index increased 3.1%, as some Americans noticed increasing gas, electric bills, and struggle to afford groceries. Economists had hoped that The December report would offer a clear window into inflation trends after data disruptions tied to last year's government shutdown affected the November CPI report release. But some analysts believe the new report was also impacted. Distortions caused by the government shutdown have made the inflation data harder to interpret, but the recent run of figures suggests inflation has peaked. Mike Pierce, chief U.S. economist at Oxford Economics, said in the January 13th note, "We think tariff-driven price rises have been mostly passed through and anticipated further disinflation." Disinflation is the term. In services, inflation in 2026 will drive inflation back closer to the 2% target by the end of the year. Bankrate financial analyst Stephen Cates said consumers can breathe a sigh of relief that the annual inflation rate did not snap back to 3%. Although today's reading doesn't demonstrate additional progress in inflation, it does take a step backwards. Either. Katie said in their separate January 13th note, the November CPI turned out not to be a fake head after all. The core inflation rate. What is the core U.S. inflation rate? The core inflation rate, which excludes volatile food and energy prices, is closely watched by Federal Reserve policymakers. It rose 2.6% over the last 12 months, consistent with the month before. Are gas prices falling? Gasoline prices fell 0.5% in December, and they're down 3.4% over the year. Regular unleaded averaged $2.82 a gallon, January 13th, down from $2.92 last month, and $3.07, $3.07 I should be saying, according to AAA. In contrast, electricity costs increased 6.7%, and the natural gas index rose 10.8% in the 12 months ending in December. Are grocery prices getting more expensive? Prices for food at home or groceries rose 0.7% in December and are up 2.4% over the past year. In December, the cost of dairy-related products rose 0.9%. The price of cereals and bakery products increased 0.6%. First and vegetable prices jumped 0.5%, and non-alcoholic beverages jumped 0.4%. Meanwhile, the price of eggs fell 8.2% in December. The food away from home index also rose 0.7% in the final month of 2025 and is up 4.1% over the past 12 months. Prices for several commonly imported goods subject to tariffs include appliances, some furniture, new vehicles, and video and audio equipment were either lower or unchanged from the month before. The key takeaway is that good prices were very benign, which underscores the point that tariffs have had a far more muted impact on inflation than feared. James Knightley, chief international economist at ING, said in a statement to USA Today, "This is a remarkable story and suggests a U.S. retailer is squeezing their profit margins. Consumers anticipate near-term inflation to rise to 3.4% and believe they will have more trouble paying down debt in the next 3 months, according to the New York Fed's December survey of consumer expectations. Economists say the consumer sentiment reflects uneven financial conditions across the income groups, and that some households could see temporary relief in 2026 and see from larger tax refunds. The December CPI report will help inform Federal Reserve policymakers' next interest rate decision after their two-day meeting at the end of January, with the December reading coming in at 2.7%. Inflation remains above the Fed's 2% target. Inflation and the unemployment rate from November to December, a decline, has dampened the expectations for another cut to the Fed's benchmark interest rate. Mike Scordelis, head of U.S. economics at Truist, told USA Today. With unemployment still low, growth running above trend, fiscal stimulus providing an offset, and inflation remaining above target, the Fed can comfortably keep rates on hold this month and likely over the next few meetings. Principal Asset Management Chief Global Strategist Seema Shah said in a statement to USA Today. However, a deflationary trend is gradually taking shape. As tariff pass-through effects become clearer and inflation concerns ease, the Fed is likely to shift towards a stance where one or two more cuts can be justified. Although the decision is not expected to be unanimous, forecasters now broadly anticipate the Federal Open Market Committee will leave its target rate range unchanged between 3.5% and 3.75% after 3 consecutive cuts last year. The January meeting will mark the first since news broke that the Justice Department is investigating Federal Chair Jerome Powell and fuel concerns about the central bank's independence. While we do not believe this will alter the near-term course of monetary policy, it will make the next Fed chair's job that much harder to build a consensus among the 19 members of the Federal Open Market Committee, Wells Fargo economists said in the January 12th report about the federal inquiry. Consumers struggle with ACA premiums. Months after she signed up for health insurance in mid-2025, Houston resident Mila Clark ran the numbers and knew Affordable Care Act coverage wouldn't be an option for 2026. The 36-year-old small business owner couldn't find a plan as inexpensive as the $350 per month insurance she had in 2025. The COVID-era subsidies that made Obamacare health insurance less expensive expired in December, leaving Clark and millions of others with sharply higher insurance bills in 2026. The extra costs were too much for Clark. In addition to wildly costly monthly premiums, she spent hundreds each month on insulin, an insulin pump, a continuous glucose monitor, and medical appointments to treat her type 1 diabetes. I was spending over $1,000 a month just trying to stay alive, said Clark, a health coach and diabetes advocate who runs the Hangry Woman website. Signing up for an ACA plan, Clark married her partner Greg in a hastily planned courthouse ceremony on December 1st so she could be added to his corporate health care insurance plan. The thing that kind of irks me is that we had to rush our plans. We had this thing looming over our heads and the decision was life or death. Without the enhanced tax credits that expired at the end of 2025, average costs for 22 million Americans who get subsidized ACA insurance more than doubled in January, according to KFF, a health policy nonprofit. An average of 33.8 million Americans are expected to lose health insurance through 2038 because of the expiration of the enhanced subsidies, the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office said in December. Others, such as Clark, will get coverage elsewhere. In an election year when affordability remains a top concern among voters, Congress continues to debate the solution for rising ACA health insurance costs. The House of Representatives on January 8th voted to extend the enhanced subsidies for the additional 3 years. The bill is less likely to clear the Senate, which has already voted to reject the enhanced subsidies, but talks have continued among some senators for a possible bipartisan solution to rising health insurance costs. If the House bill is adopted, the CBO estimated the legislation would add $80.6 billion to the federal budget deficit by 2035. With no legislative solution in sight, consumers are cutting expenses elsewhere to maintain their health insurance. Altoona, Wisconsin resident Kelly Berry and her husband are both self-employed and don't have access to corporate health insurance. They've relied on Obamacare coverage for doctor visits, annual physicals, vaccinations, and other preventable care. In 2025, they had individual bronze-level insurance plans that each carried $7,500 deductibles and monthly premiums that were fully subsidized. With the enhanced subsidies gone in 2026, they pay a combined $2,300 per month for plans that carry $8,000 deductibles, the amount they must pay before coverage kicks in. They go from $0 to $2,300 per month. To go from $0 to $2,300 per month is financially a large hit, said Barry, 58, who serves as a consultant and offers peer review services for small businesses. They've cut back on streaming service and spent less on Christmas. They probably will skip vacation and Barry won't attend an upcoming work conference in Nova Scotia, Canada. Even after cutting household expenses, she doesn't know if they will save enough to pay their monthly insurance bills. She thinks entrepreneurs will think twice before leaving a corporate job with robust health insurance. That means fewer people willing to start a small business, said Kelly, a former University of Wisconsin AU Clare business professor who taught marketing, research, and entrepreneurship. It doesn't feel fair to penalize people who are doing their best to stay covered and be responsible, Barry said. Chicago resident Farai Khandaker is still searching for health insurance. A health insurance plan that will allow her to visit her doctor and fill prescriptions at a reasonable rate. I'm looking for a unicorn that doesn't exist, said Kandakar, a self-employed consultant and information technology project manager. The lowest tier plan charged a monthly premium of $250, but she said it charged 50% co-insurance, the percentage of a medical bill of service that she must pay out of pocket. She visits a specialist twice a year and fills a prescription for chronic conditions. Paying a higher monthly premium and more of her own money when getting care doesn't make financial sense for her, she passed. Kandakar has spent many days researching health insurance options and making calls before the January 15th enrollment deadline. She's not optimistic she'll find an affordable plan with robust coverage. She's also losing hope that Congress will find a solution. I can't believe they are letting it expire right now when the cost of living and inflation have skyrocketed, Kandakar said. It just really hurts right now. Rent has gone up. I go to the grocery store and I am paying so much more. Now health care as well? Following the House vote on January 8th, advocates urged the Senate to pass legislation to extend the subsidies for consumers. Millions of Americans, especially young adults and families already facing rising costs, are depending on these credits to keep their coverage and avoid being priced out of care. Continued delays add to confusion and force people to make impossible choices between health care and basic needs, said Kristen McGuire, President and CEO of Young Invincibles, a nonprofit health and education advocacy group. Doctors and clinics that take care of people without health insurance anticipate many Americans will seek care after losing coverage. Federally funded community health centers already care for about 1 in 5 Americans without health insurance. These centers are located in rural communities, expected to an additional 1.9 million to 4.2 billion. 4.2 million, both are millions. Uninsured patients that will need care because of the expiration of the ACA enhanced subsidies and Medicaid costs from the Republicans' 2025 tax cut and spending legislation, according to the National Association of Community Health Centers. About 1,800 of the nation's 17,000 community health centers would close because of the financial strain of more uninsured patients, said Caillou Rhee, President and CEO of the Community Health Centers Group. For people with chronic health conditions such as diabetes, delaying or not getting care could be fatal. The Community Health Centers Group estimates 5,000 to 6,000 people could die as a result of the Medicaid and ACA cuts. We're at a very tenuous situation already, said Rhee. The patient impact is extraordinary. And your Social Security goes a little further in these states. Social Security is meant to replace about 40% of the income you earned in your working life. A new report from Finance Buzz sets out to measure how far Social Security actually goes in every state. As it turns out, that 40% figure isn't far off. Social Security goes the furthest in Kansas, where the average annual payment covers roughly 45% of living expenses for seniors, according to the Personal Finance site. As Social Security covers the least in Hawaii, where the average annual payment covers just 21% of retirement expenses. Across the country, we find it covers about 38% of expenses on average, said Josh Colbert, Finance Buzz researcher and author of the December 23rd report. In about half the country, it meets the 40% standards that they are shooting for. The analysts The analysis found that Social Security benefits cover at least 40% of annual living expenses in 24 states. Nearly 2 of those Americans move to a new home when they retire, according to a Trans-American Center for Retirement Studies. Often the goal is to downsize. The one way to economize in retirement is to find a state with lower cost of living. Here's the top 10 states that goes furthest. Kansas, it covers the average annual expenses. It covers about 45%. Oklahoma, it covers about 44%. Indiana covers about 43.15%. Minnesota covers about 43%. Iowa covers about 42.8%. Nebraska 42.5%. Alabama covers 42.3%. Missouri 42.2%. Michigan 42.2%. And Tennessee is 42%. It spreads thinnest in these 10 states. Hawaii at 21.3%. Massachusetts at 26.5%. It's going down, by the way. We're going up. So Hawaii is bottom of the list, just for your reference. California, it covers 27.1%. District of Columbia is 28.6%. 29% in Alaska. 30.5% to be exact in New York. 31.9% in Maine. 33.3% in Montana, 34.4% in Oregon, and 34.6% in Vermont. The states where Social Security coverage is stretched thin are generally places with higher cost of living. Some, such as Alaska and Hawaii, are relatively remote. States where Social Security goes further tend to have a mix of urban centers and huge rural areas with lower cost, Colbert said. Living cost aside, retirees should consider where they want to actually spend time in retirement before they commit to a move, said Matthew Spiegel, a financial professor at Yale University. Housing in rural Florida costs less than in Manhattan, but if our hypothetical retiree wants to attend Broadway shows and Knicks games regularly, the frequent flights from rural Florida to Manhattan will quickly become costly in terms of time and money, now that rural house is not so cheap. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the USA Today on Thursday, January 15, 2026. On the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we'll return for more readings after this short break. Your reader for this hour has been Nick. Thank you.
Hunger Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from USA Today for the 15th day of January. Your reader for this hour is Tom Scanlon. We begin with the sports page, and our first article is titled Portal Problem at Quarterback. Call it the Big Orange Conundrum, the mystery of East Tennessee, the insoluble problem of Volesville. Why can't Josh Heupel land a transfer quarterback? It defies logic that this former Heisman runner-up, whose Tennessee offenses have never ranked outside of the top 20 nationally, cannot secure purchase of a transfer trigger. It's like Gordon Ramsay being unable to get his hands on a good cut of meat. Picasso can't procure a paintbrush. The Vols' empty pursuit of a transfer quarterback has been one of the top head-scratchers of the portal sweepstakes. One of the nation's most proved quarterback developers, coaching at SEC school with a national brand, can't wrap his fingers around the prize. Strange. Unless outbound Tennessee quarterback Joey Aguilar wins his courtroom bid for another season of eligibility, or a quarterback pops into the portal at the 11th hour, the Vols are going to find themselves in a bit of a pickle at a position of need. Tennessee didn't pounce quickly enough on Brendan Sorsby. The Vols watched his Cincinnati transfer zip to Texas Tech. Sorsby said last number he'd like to play in Neyland Stadium, Tennessee. Couldn't land him. Ironically, for a coach who prides himself on warp speed offense, Heupel and the Vols came off the line too slowly. Tennessee's pursuit of Ty Thompson wasn't enough to keep the Alabama quarterback from entering the draft. The Vols whiffed on Sam Levitt. Old nemesis Kane Kiffin literally swooped into Knoxville and outdueled Heupel for the premier prize from Arizona State. Kiffin also scooped up Landon Clark, a big arm football champion series quarterback from Elon. If you're scoring at home, that's Kiffin 2, Heupel 0. Come to think of it, Kiffin nabbed edge rusher Jordan Dosh off Tennessee squad 2. Kiffin 3, Heupel 0. Well, Tennessee fruitlessly pursued Levitt. Former Missouri quarterback Bo Priouma jumped aboard with Virginia. Utah changed coast, but its talented quarterback Devon Hampler announced he's staying put. So much for that idea. While programs from Missouri to Baylor to Northwestern secure quarterbacks with SEC or Big Ten experience, the coach who helped mold Sam Bradford, Drew Lock, and Hendon Hooker keep having sand slip between his fingers. It's curious, no? As Heupel enters a pivotal sixth season at Tennessee, his best quarterback was signed by a predecessor, Jeremy Pruitt, a man who wouldn't know how to operate a quarterback but came with an instruction manual. It's as if Tennessee needed to bring back its former coach as a special advisor. Let Pruitt grab a few Chick-fil-A bags and do some shopping, then have Heupel coach them. Tennessee never looked better throughout its millennium than when Heupel cooked with Pruitt's ingredients. Pruitt wouldn't have known what to do with Hooker, but Heupel found him stashed in the cupboard. Together they took Tennessee on a joyride. Trouble is, Pruitt's guys are gone now, and head coach who's got plenty of cred as a quarterback developer can't coax a transfer into a competition that badly needs a veteran. Heupel just never had much juice for it in the portal. It almost brings to mind Dabo Swinney, another solid coach who's proven developer but no slick operator in the portal. This is no small problem. Transfers pave their roadway to glory. 6 of the 8 quarterbacks to start in college football playoff semifinal games since the format expanded to 12 teams were transfers. What would Heupel achieve with a proven 4 or 5-star transfer, someone like Josh Hoover? Tennessee fans would love to know, but might never find out. Hoover rebuffed Tennessee's pursuits last spring before transferring to Indiana from Texas Christian after this season. Meanwhile, Heupel plies his craft squeezing juice out of prospect players like Joe Milton and Aguilar, who led the nation in interceptions in Appalachian State before improving under Heppel. While SEC peers LSU, Auburn, Missouri, and Kentucky made quarterback upgrades via portal acquisitions, Tennessee's options consist of five-star true freshman Faison Brandon and rising redshirt freshman George McIntyre. Tennessee's interest in a transfer quarterback tells you the staff realizes it needs help in 2026. A peek at the portal rankings tell you nearly all the top quarterback options are off the board. So Tennessee's predicament lingers. There are few coaches I trust more than Heppel to develop a transfer quarterback, but top transfers sure don't seem too eager to play for him. Here's a baseball story. Cards End Saga deal All-Star Arendo. Dateline Phoenix. The Arizona Diamondbacks tried to trade All-Star second baseman Ketel Marte, flirted with free agent third baseman Alex Bregman, and wound up Tuesday, January 13th, acquiring Nolan Arenado. This outcome wasn't on the D-backs' winter bingo card, but for a team trying to stay competitive in the National League West while still reducing payroll, they'll take it. Currently acquiring a 10-time Gold Glove winner and 8-time All-Star for the price of a fringe prospect, with the St. Louis Cardinals paying most of Arendo's salary, turned out to be a perfect fit. Arendo has 2 years and $42 million left on his contract, but the Cardinals are paying $31 million of his deal, with the Diamondbacks responsible for $5 million 2026 and $6 million 2027. They didn't even have to give up a top 30 prospect with right-hander Jack Martinez, an 8th-round draft pick from Arizona State a year ago, going to the Cardinals. Martinez is yet to make his professional debut. We think he really solidifies our defense in the infield, said Mike Hazen, D-backs president of baseball operations. That's been a priority for us to improve on our defense, which I believe is going to have a direct impact on our pitching in a significant way. Really, the trade was made to accommodate Arendo, age 34. He didn't want to remain in St. Louis since they are already in a full-scale rebuild, and the Cardinals wanted to give playing time to the young players. Certainly, Cardinals would have received a much greater return a year ago, but Arendo exercises no trade rights to veto a trade to the Houston Astros. He also told the Cardinals he didn't want to join the Los Angeles Angels after they expressed interest. His hope was to be traded last spring to the Boston Red Sox and join his former Colorado Rockies teammate Trevor Story. But the Red Sox instead signed Alexander Bregman to a 3-year, $120 million contract. The Red Sox lost Bregman when he signed a 5-year, $175 million contract Saturday with the Chicago Cubs. But the Red Sox had no interest in Arendo this time around. He fell into the D-backs' laps when the Cardinals agreed to pay 3/4 of his contract. The Diamondbacks are hoping that Arendo not only bounces back after his struggles last season, but provides veteran leadership to their young clubhouse. Bregman's leadership skills also attract the D-backs, who are interested in potentially signing Bregman, but only if they're able to trade Marte. I always like the way he played the game, Hazen said. The impact he can have when he's not playing inside the walls is important to us. He's a good fit from that standpoint, too. I know how much winning means to him, and it's important to us. Arendo, who has a home in Orange County, California, told USA Today Sports in a text message Tuesday that he's thrilled to be joining the D-backs, who look for a home in the Phoenix area. He used to have a home in Scottsdale when he played for the Colorado Rockies. He was a frequent visitor at former D-backs World Series hero Luis Gonzalez's home to use as batting cages. Arendo, age 34, has struggled the past 2 years, but believes he can be a productive third baseman, and optimistic that he will bounce back from last year's dismal season. He played in 23 games in the second half of the last season with right shoulder strain, hitting .237 with 12 homers, his lowest total since 2013. Arendo replaces veteran Eugenio Suarez, who was traded to the Seattle Mariners at last year's trade deadline. We definitely see the ability to bounce back here, Hazen said. We're excited about that. We know how much work he's going to put into that. I know he's going to put in every amount of work and energy into that. We probably have a little better ballpark to hit in. So we look for him to be a solid offensive contributor for us in our lineup. With the firepower we have at the top of our lineup, we're not looking for him to carry the offense. We don't need him to carry the offense. We need him to solidify and stabilize our defense. That's a huge component to this. The Diamondbacks, who won the National League pennant in 2023 but missed the playoffs the past 2 seasons, are hoping to stay in contention until their team gets healthy. Ace Corbin Burns, who signed a $210 million contract last winter, is expected to return in the second half after recovering from Tommy John surgery. They also expect to have left fielder Lourdes Gurriel and closer A.J. Puck and Justin Martinez back before the end of the season. The Diamondbacks brought back free agent Merrill Kelly on a 2-year contract after trading him to Texas at last year's deadline, and signed veteran starter Mike Soroka. They're still searching for bullpen help and signed veteran reliever Jonathan Loaisiga to a minor league contract Tuesday with an invitation to their spring training camp. I don't think we're anywhere close to one player away from being the best team we can possibly be, Hazen said. We need to continue to shore up multiple areas on our team, and that includes the bullpen and position player group. We'll see what happens between now and opening day. Another baseball story. Royals move in fences at Kauffman Stadium. From their glory years in the 1980s through the World Series championship in 2015, and even their surprise playoff appearance in 2024, the Kansas City Royals club identity fit hand in glove alongside the dimensions at Kauffman Stadium, their home ballpark. Deep outfield fences, speedy, often elite defensive players to run down balls in the gap and swipe bases on the other side of the ball became imbued into the Royals' identity, for better and worse. Now the club is aiming to take the power back. The Royals announced on Tuesday, January 13th, that they will move the fences at Kauffman Stadium for 2026 season, a ballpark modification that should dovetail with their burgeoning collection of young bats. The fences in left and right field will move in 9 to 10 feet, and the wall lowered from 10 feet to 8.5 feet in most locations. It's not that Kauffman was a hitter's graveyard in 2025. The K was among 15 ballparks that ranked between 900 and 101 on StatCast park factors, with 100 being neutral for both pitchers and hitters. It was particularly penal for home runs. Only San Francisco and Pittsburgh rank lower than Kauffman's 85 rating for long balls. Those extra few feet should make a difference for perennial MVP candidate Bobby Witt Jr., slugger Vinny Pasquantino, and rookie Jacques Calgiano, who struggled in a 62-game audition, yet has more raw power than almost any prospect in the game. So what are the dimensions in the new outfield? Dimensions released by a team indicate that the left and right field corners are each moving 9 feet closer, from 356 to 353 feet to 347 and 344 feet. Left and right field moved from 373 to 364 feet, while the alleys moved in 10 feet from 389 to 379 feet. Dead center remains 410 feet. It's not hard to imagine Witt, who hit 30, 32, and 23 homers in his first full 3 seasons, flourished even more in this new environment. According to StatCast data, at least 4 of his doubles and triples 2025, all of which would have been homers in a majority of big league ballparks, would have been home runs at the 2026 configuration. Will turns 26 in June and only figures to be coming into his peak power years. The Royals as a team finished 26th in home runs, hitting 56% of their home runs, 89 of 159, on the road. Power costs money, and so does elite starting pitching, and altering the ballpark configuration is one way for teams outside the highest revenue realm to maximize their roster or organizational ethos. Detroit Tigers moved their center field fence in by 10 feet in 2023, promptly went from 52 homers at Comerica Park to 78. Oh, there were other factors, but that didn't hurt. At Camden Yards, the Baltimore Orioles took the opposite tack, famously moving the fence in left field back significantly in 2022, drawing pained expressions from their own right-hand hitters to scathing reviews from opponents such as Aaron Judge. 2024, they found a reasonable middle spot and added elite right-hander slugger Pete Alonso this winter. And in 2013, the San Diego Padres and Seattle Mariners both moved their fences in, with the Padres executive claiming a less pitcher-friendly Petco Park would result in baseball fans seeing the game the way it's meant to be played. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 16 minutes after the hour. We turn to professional football. Grass or turf? World Cup swap reignites NFL's playing field debate. In the NFL debate that never goes away, grass versus turf, with the league adopting new playing field standards and 7 of its 30 venues pulling up turf to install grass for 2026 World Cup matches, the NFL and its players are still working to find common ground between the end zones. Grass is the natural thing. Turf is the unnatural thing. Deion Dawkins, the all-pro left tackle for the Buffalo Bills, told USA Today Sports. If you're playing on grass, there's a give. It's a softer bottom. There's like dirt, there's soil, there's bugs. It's just a real live thing. Turf, you can scrape yourself, and the turf burn is like rubbing your arm on sandpaper. Us big guys, we can plant on the turf to hold defenders back, but sometimes your feet get caught in a little seam. Grass doesn't do that. Grass will rip up. Go ahead, preach this sermon. Exactly half of the NFL 30 venues have playing surfaces with all natural or hybrid grass, while the other half roll with synthetic turf. Grass is probably more expensive to maintain, which is why any businessman would say they'd rather have turf over grass, Dawkins continued. But for the longevity of a player, they may be investing $250 million in, and some of these guys are $500 million players. If it were me, I'd put my players on the best ground to keep your assets alive. The other side of the debate contends surf burn or not, there's essentially no difference in the injury rate between natural and synthetic turf surfaces. Football is a violent physical game, and injuries are inherent. It considered non-contact lower extremity injuries and concussions that can be linked to the playing surface. The league has 4 years maintained the data and don't show the grass is any safer than turf. On December 4th, when the NFL revealed plans to institute standards for approving playing surfaces, a big step toward the stated goal for consistency, the league's chief medical advisor, Dr. Alan Sills, doubled down on the turf as just as safe as grass theme. If you look at natural grass in one bucket, artificial fields in another bucket, we look at things like overall injuries or ACL tears or Achilles ruptures or concussions, Sills told a reporter during a video conference. And if you look at that, you don't really see what I say are statistically significant differences. And that's what we look at in medicine and biology. It's just not raw difference, but is there something that's statistically meaningfully different? Are we also looking at it by stadium? Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones, whose team plays on soft-top matrix turf at AT&T Stadium, firmly agrees with Sills' conclusion about the injury data. Never mind the feedback from players, often anecdotal but seemingly widespread. prefer playing on grass largely because it's less taxing on their bodies. Jones, like other NFL power brokers, will switch out the artificial turf for natural grass when AT&T Stadium hosts the FIFA World Cup soccer matches this summer. Add that to the debate. What's the rationale for not having grass for Cowboys games, too? There's no difference for safety, Jones told USA Today Sports. No difference. I put grass in here for the soccer because that's the only way they'll play the game, not because I think that grass is a better surface. While NFL players may overwhelmingly prefer grass, it's never been an issue prominent enough for the NFL Players Association to take to the negotiating table during labor talks. Sure, there have been bigger issues such as the percentage of revenue that determines a salary cap that has grown to a record $279.2 million per team 2025, while league revenue has soared in the neighborhood of $25 billion. Nearly a decade and a half ago, after a lockout in 2011, the NFLPA negotiated for more favorable work rules that essentially eliminated two-a-day practices during training camp and significantly reduced the amount of contact in practices throughout the year. Yet unlike elite soccer players who refuse to play on anything other than natural grass, hence 7 of the 11 NFL venues that will host World Cup matches will convert from turf to grass, NFL players have come nowhere near fighting league owners over their preference for grass. Jones insists that cost isn't an issue, although he acknowledges that artificial turf allows for much greater flexibility in staging events outside of football at his world-class stadium. No relationship to that, Jones said, asked about cost, or serious injuries between turf and grass. Considering the stadiums that will install grass for 2026 World Cup, the optics are a bad look for the NFL. Just think. The World Cup final in July will be staged in an NFL venue, MetLife Stadium. That's notorious for the high-profile injuries that occurred on its various forms of artificial turf. For the World Cup, though, turf will be out at MetLife. Grass will be in. What's good for soccer players should be good for NFL players. No, not at all, Jones disagreed. Of all the soccer players, he added, I don't know if they're doing it for safety or not. Indeed, there's so many variables for the debate, smoothness and density of the grass surface, which facilitated their roll and reduced bounce, are key elements for soccer players. It's got to be like a pool table almost, John Corcoran, the University of Tennessee's professor and NFLPA consultant, told USA Today Sports of the expectations for the World Cup pitch. Sorochan is a leading expert in what comes to turf and field management. He's worked with the NFLPA since 2010 and also consulted with the FIFA. Decades ago, in researching for the 1994 World Cup, the Michigan State alum spearheaded a major breakthrough by growing grass inside the Pontiac, Michigan Silverdome. Interestingly, he praised Jones for the grass installed at AT&T Stadium in 2024 for an international soccer friendly between the Mexico and Canada national teams. Grass was going indoors for more than a year, with a sod tacked into geotextile fabric, which covered a plastic waffle system, Sorkin described, that facilitated drainage. Both teams said it was one of the best surfaces they ever played on, Sorochan said. He added that high-tech testing, using a machine called the Flex, confirmed the surface had natural reaction, including the energy flow between players and the surface, similar to that at NFL grass fields, such as Arrowhead Stadium and Lincoln Financial Field. And the grass pitch was strong enough to play rugby, or maybe use the push-tush on it. There's nothing more strenuous than a rugby scrum that would make it buckle or rip up, Sorensen said. That surface would have held up to that easily. So you could, in theory, play the NFL game on that, in my opinion. Undoubtedly, that surface will be played when AT&T Stadium hosts 9 World Cup matches, including a knockout round semifinal. What Jerry Jones has done, he brought grow lights They got the whole field covered with LED lights growing the grass, Sorensen said, envisioning the process that will be used after the grass field is transported from a sod farm and installed in the stadium. So you can do it. Of the NFL's dome stadiums, there are two: Allegiant Stadium, home of the Las Vegas Raiders, and State Farm Stadium, home of the Arizona Cardinals, that utilize natural grass. In both cases, the stadium designs account for the grass fields to be grown outside the stadium on huge trays that moved inside for the games. As the debate runs much wider that the viability of growing or maintaining grass for use indoors. Nick Pappas, the NFL's field director who oversees the operations, maintenance, research, and compliance matters for all of the league's venues, underscores a bottom-line challenge tied to the grass versus turf conundrum. Got essentially 30 different surfaces out there, Pappas told reporters during the December 4th video conference. While 15 may be synthetic turf today, 15 may be natural grass. The reality is those 15 natural grass fields vary location to location. They vary throughout the season. Sometimes they vary from one side of the field to the other. Pappas went on to mention variables that include artificial turf fields that differ by manufacturer, style, and age. For all surfaces, the difference in climates and type of stadiums, including retractable roof and strictly outdoor venues. That makes it really challenging just to say it's a one-size-fits-all approach for both natural or synthetic, Pappas said. That surface variability and its interaction with players and their gear, NFL Stills argued, is more important for the league to address from a player safety standpoint than a field's natural or synthetic origin. I almost think it's the wrong question to ask, and I don't mean that flippantly, Sill said. What we need to do from a science, medicine, biology standpoint, we got to go back to those parameters that we can now measure. Sills pointed to an advanced tool that provides more data on traction, hardness, and the biophysical properties of surfaces, allowing better understanding of the correlation to injuries. The surface is only one driver of these low extremity injuries, he added. Lots of other factors, including player load, previous history, fatigue, positional adaptability, and cleats that are worn. So the surfaces are a component, but it's a complex equation. Still, and other officials maintain the primary goal in conjunction with the NFLPA is to improve consistency. That's thinking behind the upcoming standards that will govern NFL playing fields, with a model resembling the overhaul in recent years that analyzed NFL helmets and banned headgear deemed as less safe. Policy will essentially mandate that each NFL venue will have a new surface by 2028, with teams mandated to choose from a menu of approved fields. While the policy applies to grass surfaces too, it might fuel suspicion that the league wants to swing sentiments in favor of the use of artificial turf fields. Remember, despite the involvement of league and union officials on Joint Surface Committee, the NFL is adamant in expressing that its data show no significant injury risk from playing on turf, while the NFLPA routinely raises questions to the contrary. While our player members have been clear about their overwhelming preferences for high-quality grass surfaces, we're encouraged that their demands for more consistent and safer fields across the board are taking a step in the right direction, NFLPA in a statement provided to USA Today Sports. We look forward to continuing this work with the NFL on behalf of our player members. Soccer, a member of the NFL and PA Joint Committee, said that much of the committee's research is focused on artificial turf with an aim to improve safety. Said the decision remains to remove turf at MetLife Stadium that use slit film fibers, replacing it with a surface made of monofilament fibers, represented progress, low-hanging fruit to hopefully improve things, he said. He'd also expect pessimism when considering that none of the synthetic surfaces have resulted in reduced injury rates since the NFL and NFLPA have monitored non-contact lower extremity injuries in 2012. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio service. The time is 29 minutes after the hour. We turn now to the life section of USA Today, and our first article is titled Night Tarnishes Throne's Legacy. A Night of the Seven Kingdoms is a gross miscalculation on the part of HBO. Emphasis on gross. The newest spin-off of the premium network's once juggernaut Game of Thrones, Night has been advertised as the kinder, gentler Thrones. Forget the dragons, war, incest, and epic betrayal of the first spin-off, House of the Dragon. This show has nothing to do with the wars of wannabe kings and queens. This one's about a regular old guy, a hedge knight, in the plebeian population of Westeros, just trying to get by in a world that isn't kind to the common and poor. Based on tales of Dunk and Eggs, novellas by Thrones author George R.R. Martin, the series makes a lot of sense on paper as a new point of entry into this medieval fantasy universe. On the basis level, a series without computer-generated imagery dragons and major battles to film is far cheaper than Dragon or the original saga. But since it's about a knight, there's still plenty of opportunity for blood, sweat, and sex, with just a small-time joust instead of big-time war and conspiracy. Set about 90 years before Thrones, there are plenty of opportunities for name-dropping of Baratheons, Lannisters, and Targaryens. It adds up to something that's supposed to be Thrones light. Supposed to be, however, is the operative term here, HBO's Night, which plays Sundays at 10 Eastern Time and has 3 stars. Might have been an airy fun, but instead is torturous and drab, a pointless exercise in franchise extension that scratches none of the original itches, nor creates anything particularly exciting and new, with an emphasis on disgust and shock over, storytelling or interesting characters. It takes fewer than 5 minutes to reference rape and shows graphic projectile defecation, seriously. But even after 6 entire episodes, there's little else of note. It's not funny, nor is it gripping or thrilling. It's half-hearted and listless as its main character. The protagonist would be Sir Duncan the Tall, more commonly called Dunk, played by Peter Claffey. Anything the show really explains about him is right there in the title. He's tall and he's a knight. He's also seemingly the only honorable person in Westeros. A problem for the poor gentle giant as he tries to make his way as a hedge knight after the death of his old hedge knight master. A hedge knight defined as a knight without much wealth, acclaim, or a regular job. His big plan is to enter a tournament, win acclaim and prizes, be drafted by some lord into service. Tries to get in the tournament by asking nicely and pouting when all the powerful people in this notably cruel country are mean to him, and by recruiting a weird bald kid called Egg, played by Dexter Sol Ansel, as his own squire. If creator Ira Parker, in conjunction with Martin himself, were going to be a more relaxed version of the Thrones universe, they over-succeeded. Night is often quite boring. The series attempts for shock and schlock, its own version of explicit sex and disturbing violence about Thrones and Dragon, with some truly disgusting sequences of body fluids. In addition to the aforementioned excrement imagery, there are gratuitous shots of urination and full frontal male nudity with genitalia so outrageously large that one can only hope that it was a prosthetic for the health of the actor involved. Based on a series of such short novellas, Night has a shallowness to its storytelling that was perhaps hard to avoid given its source material. First season takes mostly over the course of a few days, stark departure from the months and years that span Thrones and Dragon. If Parker and Martin were trying to show that the lives of small folk of Westeros are as fascinating as those of the lords and ladies, they fail miserably. Dunk is a hollow shell of a character, and Egg is all the twee, precocious tropes of TV kids' audience hate. The surrounding supporting characters are hardly worth mentioning, and all are only skin deep. A drunken Baratheon lord, played by Daniel Ings, who likes Dunk because he's tall. A pretty puppeteer, played by Tenzin Crawford, whom Dunk has a crush. They flit in and out without changing much of the story. 2 spin-offs to the post-Thrones era. All HBO has proven so far is that the original series was a singular phenomenon, not the start of a trend. One needs only to look at the decreased viewership for Dragon or the quick cancellation of similar Wheel of Time on Prime Video, or the way the streamer uber-expensive Lord of the Rings adaptation premiered without making even a whiff of cultural impact. It's more important, it turns out, to create a good story than just slap a familiar franchise, genre, or label on a TV show. With such subsequent spin-off, reboot, and revival, Hollywood churns out, that becomes more and more clear. Our next article is a book review. Thompson lands dad jokes in new children's book. Dateline, New York. You might not guess, but Kenan Thompson knows a thing or two about being unfunny. The longest-running Saturday Night Live cast member, Thompson, age 47, pulls in the laughs and has been since his Nickelodeon days in the 90s and early 100s. With all that, and Kenan and Kel, but he also has a fair share of awkward silences. I find it so humorous that it can be such a disconnect between what we thought was going to happen and what's actually happening. It's like, yo, it's not working at all? Why do we think it was? Thompson said, I just find more humor than panic in it. It's pretty funny reality to witness. Sometimes the surprises are good ones, as when Tom Hanks did Not Have Faith in the 2016 David S. Pumpkins sketch. But Hanks committed to the goofiness, cementing it in the SNL Hall of Fame. We ranked it in our list of best NL sketches of all time. When it comes to wading through jokes that don't land, Thompson has ideas for the next generation of comedy stars, which may just include his own daughters. His new children's book, Unfunny Bunny, out now from Faywell and Friends, follows a rabbit trying and failing to be funny to his classmates. Thompson's been itching to write a kid's book since he wrote his 2023 memoir, When I Was Your Age. Recording the audiobook for Unfunny Bunny was much more fun than recording 240 pages of his life story, he says. Just reminds him of the Nickelodeon days, just high energy, Thompson says. In Unfunny Bunny, our funny protagonist founders, there's a literal cricket outside his classroom until a hilarious hedgehog encourages them to practice and write jokes together. Here Thompson encapsulates the spirit of Saturday Night Live writers' room. Has a fair share of hilarious hedgehogs through the years, noting Mike O'Shea, Colin Jost, Mickey Day, and writers Dan Bulla, Streeter Seidel, Carl Tarden, Brian Tucker, who co-wrote this picture book with him. Early in his SNL days, Tina Fey, Seth Meyers, James Anderson, and Paul Pell left an impression on him. Being unfunny on SNL happens more than you'd think, Thompson said. Made some references that didn't land, especially when it came to 70s black culture, such as the 1971 movie Shaft, he said. Other times the sketch itself doesn't hit with the audience, but the filler dialogue or comedic actions do. Such a pressure cooker, and it's a lot of shows, so sometimes you're just under the gun, Thompson said. You learn pretty quickly that even if it's thin premise, you learn how to fill it with jokery. Other times he knows he has gold on his hands. Thompson said he knew the recent SNL 50 Scared Straight with Eddie Murphy would be a hit. Same goes for What's Up With That, recurring sketch that stars Thompson as a talk show host constantly cutting off Lindsey Buckingham, played by Bill Harder, with a reprise of his lengthy theme song. It's flanked by a Kenny G-like saxophone player, played by Fred Armisen, and a lively backup dancer clad in a red tracksuit, played by Jason Sudeikis. Any memorable sketches attribute to the collaboration among writers and performers on SNL. That two-headed team approach is key, Thompson says. If Unfunny Bunny has a thesis, it's that good comedy is made through collaboration and rolling with the punches. Even if kids don't hone their joke telling by the last page, they'll certainly leave with plenty of jokes. Parents, too. There's nothing better than a bad joke, Thompson said. There's so much good intention involved, you know what I mean? So you got to pat the guy in the back even though the joke is lame, and you move on to the next one. Or that person tells another bad joke, and that's just who they are. It's all about celebrating the people that attempt to bring us joy, whether they fall short or not. Bad jokes are a family legacy for Thompson, who remembers his dad horsing around when he was a kid. Thompson himself agrees that his daughters, age 11 and 7, would consider him a dad joke offender. My little one, she's a little joke teller. She tells clever ones, though, Thompson says. She started with knock-knock jokes and your classic orange you glad lines, but now she's getting into wordplay, he says. They're simple, but they're actual jokes. I'm like, well, look at you. I love it. With Unfunny Bunny, Thompson's looking forward to providing a gather-round moment for kids and parents to bond over bad jokes, good friends, and the persistent power of comedy. Can't wait to how people on Instagram like, thanks a lot. My dad won't stop telling jokes now, Thompson says. Our next article is titled, Clooney Weil Reunite. Tarantino remarks prompt call for kindness. Dateline Beverly Hills, California. On the eve of the 83rd Annual Golden Globes, former ER co-stars Noah Weil and George Clooney were reunited at the ARP Awards, a testament to their decades-long friendship. The ARP Movies for Grown-Ups Award turned out to be a big night for former ER cast member, as Weil won the Best Actor in TV awards for his role as Dr. Michael Robbie Rabinovich on The Pit. Season 2 is now streaming on HBO Max. And Clooney took home the award for Best Actor for his role in the Netflix movie Jay Kelly. While age 54, Clooney 64, presented each other with their respective awards January 10th. And during Clooney's remark, he proudly said, "When I grow up, I want to be Noah Weil." After singing his praises as an actor, a father, a friend, and a man, from his seat, Weil could be seen raising his hand to his face, wiping tears from his eyes. When he joined Clooney on stage to receive his award, he said his longtime collaborator's remarks made him tear up. Weil, too, looking back at the many years he's known Clooney, especially what he's learned from the actor during their shared time on ER. I learned a lot of what I practiced on the set of The Pit in terms of professionalism from this man right here, he said. I remember vividly the first week of ER. He called the entire cast into his trailer and he said, "Okay, everybody, this time it's going to be different. We're going to be nice to everyone, and there isn't going to be any division between cast and crew or foreground and background." Well, said that ever since that time on the medical drama, he's been trying to find that feeling, that sense of family, that sense of commitment that Clooney gave the cast and crew then. It was only with The Pit that I found that again, he added. This has been the second time lightning has struck in my life, he went on. I don't know that it will strike again, but I'm very conscious of being present and clear-eyed for all of this. Accepting the award for Best Actor for Jay Kelly, Clooney joked about the age requirements for winning an AARP award. I realize now that the only way I was going to win anything is that Timothée Chalamet is too damn young. Put that in your pipe, Mr. Timothy, Clooney said. When I was, Paul Mescal, how old are you? When I was 29 years old, I heard somebody die when they were 64. I think they lived a good life. And now it's like, what are you talking about? During his Best Actor speech, Clooney took time to address comments Quentin Tarantino made in December about actor Paul Dano, whom he called weak sauce, and Matthew Lillard, whom he said he didn't care for as an actor. Jay Kelly's a film about and made by people who love actors, Clooney said. It's an important part of this. You know, people throughout this room and people I've known most of my life, actually. And most of them are actors, and I have great affinity. I don't enjoy watching people be cruel to actors. By the way, Paul Dano and Owen Wilson and Matt Lillard, I'd be honored to work with those actors. Honored, Clooney added, to applause from the room. We're living in a time of cruelty. We don't need to be adding to it. You're listening to a reading of today's issue of USA Today and the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour. Our next article is titled Adam Sandler Pledges He Will Make 50 More Movies. And at least 25 will be good, the actor said at the AARP Movies for Grown-Ups Award. Dateline, Beverly Hills, California. For Adam Sandler, growing old is definitely a laughing matter. After receiving a heartfelt introduction from his longtime friend Henry Winkler, age 80, Sandler stepped up to the stage at the AARP Movies for Grown-Ups Awards on January 10th to accept his Career Achievement honor. Sandler kicked off his speech in his trademark comedic voice by first giving a shout-out to my silver-held daddies and salt and pepper mamas. The Fonz is in the house, quipped Sandler, age 59. A lot of people said to me, I think ARP awards mean that you're old now. To say that, it's not because of this award. I got 10 other reasons. The other day I had to swallow a Viagra just to take a piss, Sandler said to an eruption of laughter from audiences. He held a printed laundry list of reasons why he's actually old. Number 2, when I sit down, it sounds like a semi-truck driving over a family of lobsters. Number 3, my tongue only has one taste bud left, and everything I eat now tastes like oatmeal, except oatmeal, which tastes like Vaseline. Number 4, the font on my phone is so big my text can be read by anyone with a window seat on a Delta flight. After a few minutes of belly laughs from attendees, including George Clooney, Paul Mescal, and Winkler, Sandler thanked his family for supporting my goofiness for all these years. And I love you. Thank you, my lovely wife, for staying with me even though part of my body is where it used to be. Thank you to my 2 gorgeous children for not laughing every time I walk down the hallway shirtless. They do laugh, by the way, and I may say to everyone in this room, I don't know how much time I have left. 60 years, 80, tops. Maybe 90 if I start working out and taking creatine. And I promise to every one of you here tonight I will make at least 50 more movies before I'm dead. At least 25 of them will be good. Before hitting the red carpet at Beverly Hills, Wilshire, a Four Seasons hotel, Sandler and his wife Jackie, along with other A-listers from the night, made their way over from the BAFTA tea party a few miles away at the other Four Seasons hotel in Beverly Hills. Guillermo del Toro and the beauty of directing. You don't have to explain it. After Frankenstein star Jacob Elordi introduced Guillermo del Toro on stage to receive the award for Best Director for the Netflix adaptation of Mary Shelley's Gothic novel, the Mexican filmmaker joked that Jake and I are going to star in a remake of Twins this year, poking fun at their height difference. Then Del Toro, age 61, known for classics such as Hellboy and Pan's Labyrinth, gave a resonant speech about the art of directing. What is directing? Well, that's very hard to explain for the layman or the professional. When I was younger, my kids used to say, Dad, your job is not hard at all. You say action and cut, and everybody does everything else. But I think directing is a little bit like the force of gravity. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to explain how it works. But everybody knows when it's there, and everybody knows when it's not. The second beauty of directing is to understand a simple truth. We're all born with one song to sing. That's it, he said. We spend the rest of our lives, once we find it, trying to sing it better and better every time. For me, as a young man of 11 years, I became very clear that Frankenstein was that song for me. Tried to give it my all. Tried to give it the hurt and beauty that it needed. Critics, viewers, and Hollywood directors alike can't stop singing the praises of Ryan Coogler's Sinners, and the film's cast is no different. At the AARP Awards, Sinners, actor Delroy Lindo, who played a blues musician named Delta Slim, took home the honor for supporting actor and reflected on his gratitude to Coogler and the influence his filmmaking will have for generations to come. It's my belief that audiences many years in the future will be talking about Sinners and the remarkable achievement of this film, talking about Ryan Coogler for many, many years to come, Lito said. Not only in terms of enjoyment that the audiences got from the film, but the impact that this film has and will have on cinematic culture. And the fact that I could be a part of that, I don't have words to express my gratitude. The Movies for Grown Up Awards will be broadcast by Great Performances on Sunday, February 22nd at 7 on Eastern Time on PBS. Our next article is titled, Leo and Timmy Make Schmoozing Rounds. Dateline Los Angeles. A meeting between leading Best Actor candidates / global superstars Leonardo DiCaprio and Timothée Chalamet was in the stars at the AFI Awards on January 9th. The duo faced off at the Golden Globes in the race for Best Actor in a Comedy. Chalamet took home the Globe. They're supposed to come together at the Palm Springs Film Festival January 3rd, but DiCaprio was waylaid while traveling back from his Jeff Bezos yacht vacation. Here's the photographic proof that the DiCaprio-Chalamet meeting took place at the AFI Awards. Both stars' films, DiCaprio's One Battle After Another and Chalamet's Marty Supreme, were recognized among the year's best by the American Film Institute. The annual awards honored 21 of the most notable films and TV series of the past year. It's the only award show where you've already won, AFI President Bob Gazelle said the opening remarks. Let's get that off the table. This is not about competition. The Hollywood event is also the best schmoozing and critical awards campaign stop for the Oscar frontrunners. DiCaprio, the man of any hour, was everywhere, posing with Gwyneth Paltrow, Titanic reunion with James Cameron, and goofing around with the Del Toros. One Battle co-star Benicio del Toro and Frankenstein creator Guillermo del Toro. Sartorially gifted, George Clooney expressed his smiling surprise seeing his sartorially challenged Jay Kelly co-star Adam Sandler wearing a similar suit jacket. Sandler's over a floral shirt and Clooney's over his classic unbuttoned shirt, of course. The star duo even held a blue jacket sleeve to sleeve, see if they're the exact shade. Just feet away, the lowdown star Ethan Hawke goofed around with arm around the poster of his critically acclaimed FX series, even tickling his character's chest with his free hand during a personal photo. Center star Michael B. Jordan breezed into the event just before start time, but still made time for some key hellos, including a chat with Hawke and Task star Marlon Ruffalo, before backslapping Friday night's Lights reunion with Jesse Plemons. They seemed like they really missed each other. Sinners director Ryan Coogler shared his thoughts with Apple CEO Tim Cook in attendance for the Apple TV Plus show Severance. Ariana Grande, represented for Wicked for Good, was Jeff Goldblum and director John M. Chu. Grande paid her respects to grand elders and moved from Sandler to Paltrow and then comedy legend Carol Burnett. But the one who towered above them all was 6'6" Frankenstein star Jacob Elordi. It was easy to spot talking with One Battle standout Tanya Taylor and hosting a Hollywood giant meeting with 6'4" Goldblum. The AFI event opened with a film montage featuring the famed Charlie Chaplin song Smile, with the lyrics, "Smile, though your heart is breaking." Gazelle said the lyrics were appropriate after deaths in the film world, including Robert Redford, Diane Keaton, and Rob and Michelle. That's director Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle Singer Reiner, who were slain on December 14th. Our hearts are breaking every day, it seems, on the hour, Gazelle said, with so much loss. Why are we celebrating today? Because we need you. Because you need your stories to help us make sense in emotions we cannot escape, nor should we escape them. Burnett, age 92, who grew up just miles away in Hollywood, gave the benediction to close out the annual luncheon. The legend received a rousing standing ovation of taking the stage. I never lost deep respect and love that I have for all the stories we tell through the cinema and television. Creative collaboration has always remained at the heart of our work, Burnett said. The world's a better place for having heard your voices. This last article is from the Lifeline section. How was your day, heated rivalry fans? Get ready to head back to the cottage, heated rivalry fans. Romance author Rachel Reed is adding a book to the Game Changers series, and it follows Ilya Rozanov and Shane Hollander navigating married life and public backlash. The hockey romance series has recently exploded in popularity thanks to HBO Max's adaptation. Canadian Import stars Hudson William and Connor Story as Shane and Ilya, subjects of Reed's second book in the series. Unrivaled, the seventh book in the series, but the third to follow Ilya and Shane love story, will be published September 29th from Harlequin Books. Who's celebrating a birthday today? Actor Anja Martin turned 79. Director Mario Van Peebles, 69. Guitarist Adam Jones, 61. Actor James Nesbitt, 61. Actor Chad Lowe, 58. Actor-director Regina King, 55. Actor Eddie Cahill, 48. Rapper Pitbull, 45. Actor Jesse Schramm, 40. DJ music producer Skillrex, 38. Singer-actor Dove Cameron, 30. Singer-actor Grace Vanderwall, 22. You're listening to reading articles and features from USA Today for the 15th day of January on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Your reader has been Tom Scanlon.
following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision,